guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to review the macro picture, the macroeconomic picture, and how it relates to cryptocurrencies. We're going to look at just the big picture of the economy and economies in general, governments, and how I see cryptocurrency in relationship to the macro picture. And things like that. So let's take a look at this supply and demand curve, right? So just to revamp your memory of economics, if you've ever taken that, you have this supply curve, right? The supply curve right here, and you have a demand curve, right? Now, a lot of these concepts make sense with change in time. Now, I don't want to get too complicated, but just simply put, if you have a time in the past and a current time, this difference between them is simply this time minus this time, right? And that just gives you how much time has passed. So like a year, right? January 2020, January 2021. So, subtract January 2020 equals 1 year, right? So that's all change in time is, right? So these concepts, such as this thing right here, make sense only when you think about change in time. You're thinking over time, right? So, okay, so you have supply and you have demand. You've probably heard this a billion times. And you have some quantity that the economy is willing to produce over time at a certain price. At this certain price, there's a certain amount of supply that the economy is willing to produce along this curve, right? And if the price goes higher, the quantity that the economy wants to produce is more. If the price goes lower, the quantity that the economy wants to produce is less. It's basically what the economy wants to produce and what wants to stay in perpetual existence. So there's some supply that exists and remains in existence, like housing or whatever. Okay, so that's just to catch you up to the simple supply and demand curve. Very, very basic, very simple to understand economics, and it really does. Just this simple idea of knowing that the economy wants to produce more at higher prices and wants to produce less at higher prices along some supply curve, and demand. And I reflected upon supply. So let me reflect upon demand, right? So the at a higher price, the demand is less, right? So at higher prices, along this curve, right, along this line is price, right? So a higher price means that the economy will demand less. A lower price means the economy will demand more because, they can afford more of it. They can use more of it. So because it's a lower total allocation of their funds. Okay, so this is the basic summary of supply and demand, right? To catch you up to basic economics. And this very simple idea really does allow us to grasp a lot about the economy. Just this very basic idea. So you have this entity, the Federal Reserve. And what they do is they provide money for loans and to buy assets. And this money, well, it's not really called money according to Mike Maloney, but it's just created out of thin air. Poof. This is, it pops into existence, poof, out of nothing. So it's basically nothing, right? Okay, so how does this affect this whole central planning, this whole money that comes out of nowhere affect the economy, and then later down the line, how it will affect crypto, right? So let's go with the loans rates. Okay, so one of the things that the Federal Reserve does is it controls the rate, the interest rates of loans. That is basically the cost of currency, the cost of money, right? Is how much someone's willing to pay or charge. It's how much someone's willing to charge in order to give you their money. If I have a savings account, I have $10,000 and I give it to someone else. It's the rate that I'm willing to get paid for the risk of them taking it. And it's like the natural rate that these things usually fall on. Whenever you hear me say natural rate of money, the time value of money, it's about 7% or a 15 to 20 year period of payoff. So I will double my money in 15 to 20 years. That's the natural rate that everything floats to. Everything floats to this value naturally in the natural economy. You know that that's what we see. It's called the Buffett P to E ratio. Businesses often come to it. Now, if you have a business, usually you're going to settle for higher because of your efforts. You're getting paid for your efforts. So businesses usually yield higher than this. If they're yielding this exactly, people will often sell the business to someone who thinks that they can make a better yield, because it's not worth putting in the effort if you can realize this in the economy on average. Okay, so all of that put aside, this is the natural rate. So what does the Federal Reserve do? The Federal Reserve charges a 0% interest rate. And I know that's insanity, but that's where we're at. And that's why we are, in my opinion, in the stages before a hyperinflationary disaster. It's because this is absurd. And so what this distortion does is it shifts the supply curve to an unnatural place. They move the supply curve. They move the supply curve out to some strange level that wouldn't exist other than the fact that the Federal Reserve exists. So this is manipulating the natural free market. And so what happens is demand, goes to the amount of quantity of money or currency that needs to be in loans. So you hear this all the time, right? You hear everything's over leveraged. Everything has massive amounts of debt. We have a whole economy built on debt. This quantity is the amount of debt. So the economy would have some lower amount of debt if they didn't shift the supply curve. But because the government steps in and prints all this money, they're essentially providing quantities of loans that would not exist. So they shift the supply curve way out into some absurd level, causing this strange demand, this huge quantity of demand. And so there's this huge amount of currency that would not exist normally. And so the whole system is built on this massive, massive level of debt. So what does this do, right? Well, what they do is they destroy the supply offered by the free market. Because they make the yield so low, right? This is the natural rate. No one in the economy is giving out these loans. The Federal Reserve is the only one. And only, so those who are closest, those who have this benefit, those who get to be next to the printer, they get to see these interest rates, they get this zero rate, and those who have the approved connection to the Federal Reserve get access to this absurdly low level of interest. And no one in their right mind, I wouldn't do this, no one in their right mind is going to lend money for zero, except for the Federal Reserve, because they don't care about, it comes poof into existence, and so this is taking advantage of the fact that everybody uses the dollar, like people use the dollar as part of their daily lives. It's just that they're taking advantage of the fact that the dollar is built into so many parts of society. And they're using that as their advantage, their weapon, or whatever. So what they do is they destroy the supply offered by the free market. There's no one in their right mind who's giving out loans at 0% except for the Fed. So no one wants to save, no one wants to do that. So they have to find yield somewhere else. So what they do, but what they also do is create market dependence on low rates through artificially high levels of demand. So all of these businesses that are like, this is not only a quantity, but there's also a bunch of businesses that this whole big gap right here in quantity is a bunch of businesses that would not have taken this. But now our whole economy, this huge section of our economy, like you could even see how this curve shifts like this and goes exponential. And the more the Fed pushes out the interest rate, the further we go out in the insanity, right? So this is we're in the stages where it's just insanity, right? The more they push this out, it's just going to go into, and so this natural section, the whole economy will be artificially held up by this huge quantity of money from shifting the supply that doesn't normally exist. They push the supply. They push the quantity, see this is quantity, up to the right is more supply. So they shift the supply all the way out at a higher quantity, right? And that makes this whole artificial system, okay? It distorts everything. And so this explains, why we see a lot of these distortions. Okay, but now we're gonna go step into the other thing that they do with money. They can provide it for loans, but they can also buy assets. Okay, so what the government does when they buy assets, they shift the demand curve. The quantity that's demanded by the market, they shift this demand curve to a higher quantity than it is normal. And what that does is that creates higher prices than are normal and a higher quantity that needs to be produced over time than is normal, right? So the cost, this higher cost that people feel, this cost is felt by the economy. It's felt by consumers. It's suffered from the consumers. It's taken out of the economy. It's removed. It's all this wealth taken away from me, you, and everyone else. As Ford said, if people understood how the money system worked, there would be riots in the streets tomorrow. There's a reason he said that. It's because it's a disaster. This entity is a disaster. A disaster. Okay? Okay, but okay, so what happens here is this is wasted resources. All the extra quantity that's created because of this. So what happens when the Fed buys up all these mortgages? It buys all these homes. The banks could just sell homes to these people. And then they're gonna make new loans and new homes, and then they just sell that to the Federal Reserve, right? And so the Federal Reserve will take them at any price. So like I said, it's taking this artificially high demand. But what happens is, since prices are artificially held up, resources are spent to build extra homes that would not have done that. And so it is wasted resources. So not only do you get higher prices, but you also get resources wasted in other areas to produce more houses, and the Fed has to keep this thing going to hold up the price. So it continuously creates more quantity of homes than are needed. And this is through time, right? So as the Fed keeps pushing up homes or pushing up any asset, the supply of that thing will be overproduced, and the Fed has to just keep buying it and keep buying it and keep buying it. That's why you have a ballooning assets on the Federal Reserve. Okay, and what this causes is wasted resources. So what happens is lumber, concrete, and plastics, the things that build homes, are all reflecting this absurd level of demand that the Federal Reserve did since the crisis, and since you've seen the ballooning debt. Their debt just took off, and now they don't even report it anymore. We are in the end stages. I don't care what anyone's saying. We are in the end stages of economic collapse. When you have this kind of thing happening, 24% increase since the March of last year, 15%, some of these things could be dug out of the ground and produced more. So this is the price increase. Okay, so that means that this is wasted resources. It's also prices from the cost felt by consumers. This is the cost felt by consumers by competing with this insane system. Money goes to asset holders and banks where it competes with those who don't have special connections. This reduces supply from the public at the same time as increasing price. With respect to other areas of the economy, price goes up, creating a resource drain on the rest of the economy. So more resources go towards the things that the Federal Reserve buys than should be going there. At the same time, they're restricting supply by adding it to their balance sheet. So they create these massive distortions. So what's also happening is, if you think of pools as a pool of money, like all these homes as a pool of money, the real estate pool, right? And there's a countless retirees or boomers who are using their homes like a savings account because they know it's always going to go up. You're getting this belief. You're creating this dependency, creating an artificial dependency on this system. So they're flooding money into the whole housing market, and people are using it like their savings account. Boomers, older people, retired people, they're using their home as a retirement account because they know the Fed's going to keep putting money in the homes and causing the prices to go up there. And these people see paper wealth and cash injections to, the Fed is basically giving cash injections to homeowners and asset holders. So the homes could be seen as the same thing as assets, right? So that is, and I even know people personally, wealthy people, who they just take second, third, fourth, fifth mortgages because their home keeps going up in value. Oh, my home's worth $225 million today because the Federal Reserve pushed it up to that price, And at the same time, the market sees this crazy high price for homes, lumber, concrete, and plastic shoots up because all these individuals start building their businesses around building homes because the prices are so high. They're going into supply. What a natural economy would do is they want to increase supply, because of this artificial demand. So that, it's just a disaster. This whole system's a disaster. Yeah, so how will the Fed's actions affect cryptocurrency? Okay, well, the price of crypto is going to go up, and so speculators rush in. But it's also a place where you can access yield and the natural 7% yield, which is funny enough, you're actually observing that in crypto. You're observing this roughly 7% on many of the crypto assets. So you're getting an influx of savers. I'm a saver, and that's one of the reasons I love crypto. And you're also going to get a bunch of lenders too, like who will lend things for 7%, which is, I guess, what I'm doing when I store my money at Celsius. I am a lender as well as a saver. And so future-oriented persons are coming to crypto as well, right? All right, but here's another way to think about cryptocurrency and why this artificial system cannot compete with a system that has competition, right? So if you think about nation states, right? You have free market nation states versus centralized planning nation states. And what happens is a free market, well, to explain what happens and why a free market nation state always comes out ahead, even if it doesn't have as much resources. The reason free markets always win, here's why. Innovation and wealth of nations of crypto, right? So we're going to go over this same concept. So what happens when you have a competitive environment? You have an innovator. In the natural modern economy, in natural modern economies, innovation allows for costs to produce things to drop, right? So what happens is the innovator can shift the supply curve, right? The innovators could produce a supply curve, right? The government increases the supply of money, but it cannot increase supply of stuff, like homes, things, phones. The government cannot increase the supply of stuff. However, the innovators can increase the supply of stuff. And they do that because they figure out some new innovation that shifts the supply curve, right? And what happens is there's a drop in price. Well, the innovator gets to charge the same price, whereas the innovation costs less to produce. They're willing to produce it at a less price, but because they're competing with people who don't have the innovation, they get this pretty big profit. The innovator's profits, right? The difference between its competition in itself is profit. And what happens is this guy, he gets to capture this whole entire free market right here as he lowers prices as things come closer to the price that he's charging. The innovator is charging. So he gets this free market right here. He gets this whole entire market right here that was not even capable, that the old market was not even capable of. So it grew the economy by this quantity of stuff, as well as everyone else here wants the cheaper stuff as well. So he gets this big period of time, the innovator gets this big period of time where they get profit and market share, right? So innovators, like in a competitive environment, you have all these different businesses. The innovator gets this position. He gets the goal. He gets this huge shift. And he gets this big market quantity, he gets this big price increase, and he also can sell to this big group of people but as the shift is going, and it collects a big chunk of profits for innovating. And what they essentially do, the innovator does, is it increases supply, making everybody wealthier. The lower price exists, the economy is more, there's more quantity produced at a lower price, and the whole entire system benefits, people come away wealthier. That is the reason competitive markets always win against centrally planned markets. Now, there is a chance that a centralized government could make a decision to create a new efficiency, like when America makes the road system and the private system doesn't do that. Well, that could be kind of seen as the government behaving as a rational actor, but that is very rare, okay? In most instances, the free market will produce more stuff and more wealth. So the old system economy is warped by the Cantillon effect. Okay, that's being whoever's closer to the printer gets the benefit of the money, and so innovation is removed in our American system. Political insiders are the beneficiaries of a centrally planned Cantillon effect centrally run system. Political insiders, those with connections, they're the ones that win. The old system does not have competition and therefore cannot compete. Just like in American history, what made America great was the small amount of governments And so America could compete with anyone. And we also had a lot of natural resources. That was a double effect. We had a free market and a lot of natural resources. That's why it became such a wealthy country. But the old system cannot compete, right? The old system, our current old system cannot compete with crypto. And why is that? Cryptocurrency is a finance technology. It's also a business management software. But it allows for the financial industry, it's a financial technology, financial industry, etc. The financial industry exists in the Cantillon effect political insiders economy. So those who are closest to the printer have not innovated in years. There has been zero innovation with banking since this effect was established. Since you had some authority saying who can be and who cannot be a bank. Since they had that entity, there was no more competition. It was about who are the political insiders, who files the right paperwork, who spends this huge amount of money pleasing politicians. So the competition was removed. Cryptocurrency has introduced a massive amount of innovation of supply with financial technology. Because in the crypto industry, you're going to go through several waves of cryptocurrency deaths. There's going to be 90% failure rates, and a lot of these projects are going to fail. A lot of bad ideas are going to fail. And good riddance to them, okay? The ones that succeed, they increase supply by being efficient and producing something valuable to the economy. So the crypto, compared to the old system, will have massive amount of profits because it will bring in these new capabilities that do not exist with the old system. So you'll have more conveniences, more innovations, and this quantity of services provided, business management software and finance services, will increase the actual size of the economy. So, they're increasing the supply of financial services, increasing the supply of financial technology, increasing the supply of real financial, business and financial entities. They will reduce the cost of business management of ownership, time savings, capital raisings efforts, more business models to thrive, new information streams, automation and analytics, and store value. These things are all disrupted from cryptocurrency. And because it's a free market, so going back to what I was saying before, a free market government will always outcompete central planning because of this innovator's efficiency that is introduced by the free market. But within a government, if there is some sector of the economy, such as finance, so America, we say we're a free market, but we're not really. But even in this country, there is a financial sector. And the financial sector has centrally planned things that do not innovate. They have not innovated in years. And you have crypto, which is free market survival of the fittest. And so it has this free market innovators element. And so resources will flow from the old system to the new system. Supply of services provided creates real interest yield, convenience, and lower costs. Eventually, the lower costs will happen. Like right now, Ethereum is kind of more expensive. And if you want to understand why new technologies overtake everything, read The Innovator's Dilemma. Excellent book. It'll help you understand how these new technologies eventually do get to lower costs. Cryptocurrency will have the lower costs. And we're already there with things like Terra and Polkadot. Okay, it is coming. And it's already here for many things. So supply of services provided will yield real interest yield, convenience, and lower costs. Because it's competitive, and because these inefficient actors will die off. So conclusion, because the old economy is inefficient due to lack of competitive forces, cryptocurrency will be the economy of the future. So that's my macro picture, guys. Tell me what you think, if this is helpful in understanding the macro picture. I tried to just get from a top-down view of the very basic economic models. And if you want more advanced economic models, I could dig into more advanced stuff with the macro pictures. But I know you guys want me to hunt for gems, and that's something I'm going to be continued to do as well. So if you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. And remember, guys, my Patreons see everything first. They see every trade I make, and they get my professional research there first before anything else. Okay, guys, I look forward to bringing you high quality content in the future. Please like and subscribe.